The most common extended element we typically add to articles is the tables element. Tables are a great way to show information in our articles, so many templates will have good styles to support them. Even if there is no built-in styling, tables often look better if you're just trying to organize content to line up in a column or row format. To use tables, you will need to put your editor into extended mode, so you can access the extra table-oriented buttons. Other editors may have similar functionality to add and manage tables as well. So here's how to manage tables in your content. Tables are block elements, so they should be positioned on a line by themselves. Locate where you'd like to insert the table and click the Table button. If you're familiar with HTML tables, some of these options should be familiar to you. The columns and rows specify the number of columns and rows your table will have. You can add more later if necessary. The rest of these are straight from basic HTML. The cell padding option controls how many pixels are added around the content inside the table cell. Think of this as puffing up the table cell from the inside out. The cell spacing option specifies the distance between cells. If, for example, a cell has a border, this would be the distance between the borders of the adjacent cells. The alignment simply controls the left, center, or right alignment of the whole table itself. The border option is the older HTML attribute for whether or not there is a border. The default border looks like something from the early days of the web and should probably be avoided in general. The width and height allow you to control the size of the table. By default, it will take up only enough room to fit the content inside it. If you want to take up the full width of the content area, you can specify 100%. Any percent value will work too. You can also specify the width or height without percent signs, and it will use the specified number of pixels instead. You can, like any other content in the editor, specify the CSS class for your table. Joomla doesn't include any default table classes, but your template developer may have supplied some. Check with their documentation before changing the class here. And the last general option is the table caption. This will allow you to add a line above the table to explain content. This is a lot like an image caption on how it works on the page. Now we'll go through some of the advanced options. The ID option lets you tag this table for some other custom CSS styles. Your designer should provide instructions if this is necessary. The summary field is used by screen readers and other accessibility functions and is not shown on the screen. The style is the computed style based on the settings you've set in the General tab. The language code is rarely used, but you can use it to specify information about the language of the content inside the table. It is used by screen readers or some browsers to choose a character set for that language. The background image lets you specify a URL to an image to set the background for the entire table. The frame option lets you specify which part of the frame border will be drawn. This is rarely used because the frame design is rarely attractive. This dates before CSS, so the result is a crude-looking design. The rules option is similar to the frame option, but specifies if vertical or horizontal lines are drawn in various parts of the table. Again, this predates CSS, so the design can look inconsistent or unattractive in some browsers. The language direction is only used when you may need to write in a right-to-left language like Arabic or Hebrew. And finally, you can set the border and background colors for your whole table. If you would like to do alternating row colors, you can set the default color here. So this covers the basic options for the table itself. Once the table has been created, you can add content to it by clicking inside the cell and editing it. You can add or remove rows or columns by clicking the appropriate buttons in the editor. For example, to add another row at the end, we just click the Insert Row After button. Once we've filled up our table with useful content, we can do a few more things to make it look more attractive. We can specify the attributes of a row by clicking in the row and clicking the Table Row Properties button. This allows you to set that particular row as a header, body, or footer row. Your template may have special rules for displaying each of those to make them more attractive. You can specify the alignment in general. This will affect whether the text appears to the left, right, or centered in each cell of that row. The vertical alignment controls where the content will be displayed when the cell is taller than the content itself. For example, If you have multi-line content in a large image or in one column and just a single line of content in another, that single line will normally align to the bottom of the cell. You may want it centered or at the top. You can set this with the vertical align for the row. And of course, we can set the class if we have custom ones available just like any other content. The height option hard codes the height in pixels for this particular row. It's not common to use this, as cell padding works best to ensure that the content is spread consistently inside of any row or cell. We'll come back to the list box at the bottom after we go over the advanced options. As you can see, we get the same advanced options that we've had for the table. They work exactly the same here. What's interesting though is the background color. We can set the background color to something different than the default for the table, and this row will appear with it. If we change it to a simple highlight color for now, we can demonstrate how to do alternating row backgrounds. We have the option of applying these changes to this current row or to a set of rows. If we choose to apply it to odd rows or even rows only, it will alternate between rows and set these attributes accordingly. So if we choose a highlight color, choose one of these rules, and then update, the editor will highlight every other row accordingly. This can be used to build very readable tables if you choose an attractive background color for the alternating rows. And finally, you can adjust single cells by clicking the Table Cell Properties button. This provides the same sort of options as the table or row property buttons, but acts only on the cells themselves. If you want this cell to be part of a vertical header, for instance, you can do that by adjusting the cell type. The advanced properties are functionally the same as the table or row parameters as well. You can use either the row or table cell parameters function to apply changes to every row or every cell in the table as well. This is useful when you want to change the default settings across a large table, but then go back and change just a few individual ones separately. It's good to experiment with the table function if you have a lot of data-oriented posts or things that need to be lined up in a grid view. Experiment with the row and table cell properties to perfect the look of alternating rows and table headers. The table functions are actually quite flexible, and you can combine that with the standard text formatting options to create good-looking tables in Joomla.